Of all the dark and dreadful demonic rulers of the Abyss, none pose as dire a threat as the prince of the lower aerial kingdoms, Pazuzu. Most demon princes are involved in constant warfare, either with each other or the devils in the Blood War. Most demon princes also are confined to one layer of the Abyss. They rule from that layer and mostly stick to it. However, Pazuzu spends his time in the skies, above these bloody, endless conflict. While others are bound to their domains, as often as not prisoners of the very realms they claim to rule, unable to visit the material plane without first being summoned, Pazuzu often travels to the material plane on a whim. He has a keen interest in the affairs of mortal. Specifically, he's interested in tempting them from corrupting what they know to be honest and true, in return for questionable gifts and doubtful rewards. In fact, Pazuzu seeks nothing less than the corruption of all that lives and breathes, one broken vow or shattered moral at a time. A tall, well-proportioned man, this figure's demonic features cannot be ignored. Pazuzu has bird-like talons that scrape the floor as he approaches, and 4 feathered wings that shine with oil and smoke on his back. His head combines the features of a handsome man and a feral hawk, his cruel hooked beak filled with a forest of needle-like teeth. As mentioned before, Pazuzu is a unique demon lord. He does not rule a layer of the Abyss. Instead, he oversees a portion of almost every layer, the sky. And although he does not war with these other demon lords, all treat him with roughly equal amounts of resentment and grudging respect. Pazuzu rarely exerts his influence in the skies over realms held by other demons or deities, never in any obvious way. His favorite aerial realm is the sky above the first layer of the Abyss, which is sometimes called Pazunia in his honor. This layer is perhaps the most heavily traveled and contested of the abyssal layers. Pazuzu derives endless enjoyment soaring these skies above, while looking down with disdain and bemusement at the bickering and dealing of those below. Although, as much as he loves war and suffering, Pazuzu avoids combat, preferring to send his 6 Baylor bodyguards into battle while he observes from the sky above. When forced into conflict, his tactics are devastating. He prefers to fight with a serrated greatsword made from the wing feather of his massive Anzu that guards his lair and transmuted into a razor-sharp adamantine blade. He has breath weapons, locust swarms, ant swarms, abilities to both summon avians and take control of any creature that can fly to do his bidding. One could dispute Pazuzu's power and claim over these skies of all realms, although he does occasionally reside in the highest abyssal mountain peaks or rocky crags, or in the floating palaces of the evil cloud giants that pay him homage. His origins are hard to nail down, and while 4th edition has a lot of differing information on the creation of the Abyss and many of its denizens, it is the greatest source we have for Pazuzu's beginnings. And in 4th edition lore, Pazuzu is one of those that predates the creation of the Abyss. He is a primordial, an original being, turned Oberith. In fact, one of the only glimpses we get of Pazuzu this ancient in history is in and around the creation of the Abyss, as well as the beginnings of a few characters' stories that we know further down in D&D lore. After the Queen of Chaos and her champion Miska fell, Pazuzu slipped out of the Abyss in secret to stake his own claim to power. He made his way by secret portals to Tharizdun, who was being held in prison. The Oberith Pazuzu presented himself to one of the celestial guards there, an angelic paragon of chastity and virtue called Asmodeus. This angel, Asmodeus, listened as Pazuzu plied him with flattery and lamented that the gods had chosen to repay Asmodeus' loyalty with an eternity of service at a thankless task, at the guarding and watching of Tharizdun. With Pazuzu's words, a seed of vanity and false pride began to grow within him, fanned to a spark of arrogance by Pazuzu's words. Soon believing that he was more righteous than the deities to whom he had sworn allegiance, Asmodeus began to hear the whispers of the shard of evil at the Abyss's heart that Tharizdun had planted. Abandoning his duty to guard Tharizdun the chained god, he sought out and found the shard in the Abyss's incalculable depths. Asmodeus stole away a sliver of the shard and forged it into his ruby-tipped rod of incredible power. Armed with his scepter of absolute evil, Asmodeus led an invasion of the Astral Sea in which his divine master was slain. Asmodeus and his infernal army were imprisoned in the dominion of his former master, but the kernel placed by Pazuzu had grown into a hunger for power and it was all-consuming. Asmodeus had become a deity in his own right, but he still always hungered to return to the heart of the Abyss and steal an even more powerful fragment of the shard. Asmodeus, according to 4th edition lore, is one of the first and most notable beings completely and wholly corrupted by Pazuzu's words. And of course, these actions led to the devils versus the demons in the eternity of the Blood War. Again, a war that Pazuzu does not really take part in, but it is an excellent distraction of the other demons to let him do his own thing. It is kept secret that Pazuzu is an Oberth Lord, as he is only one of a handful of ancient entities that predate the formation of the Abyss. And apparently, the shard that created the Abyss, the Shard of Evil, that lured Tharizdun, was all Pazuzu's idea. It is also said that Pazuzu was secretly one of the generals who aided the fallen angel Asmodeus in the battle that claimed the life of his god. Pazuzu saw this as his chance to aid in the greatest corruption of all, the transformation of a faithful servant into an enemy of the gods, perhaps one of their greatest enemies. This is a secret that is only known to Asmodeus and the Oberth Lord Pazuzu, but his support came at a cost, as an yet unnamed boon still owed by the archdevil Asmodeus. Pazuzu plays the Blood War at a high level, using his secret alliance with Asmodeus to ensure that devils and demons both remain evenly matched. He wants the conflict to remain endless. Of course, the Blood War also benefits Asmodeus, who uses the chaos of the Blood War as a cover for his goals. And as you can see from this, Pazuzu is one of the most conniving, scheming, and extremely crafty demons. Highly intelligent, he has plans and action that have been around since the beginning of the Abyss and before it. We're let in on just one of these secrets, a secret that he is owed a boon with Asmodeus, the uncontested strongest devil in all of Dungeons & Dragons. And it's very well known that Pazuzu has not stopped there with his deals and corrupting of mortals. If any creature utters Pazuzu's name or any of his aliases 3 times in succession, an unholy link between the speaker and the Demon Lord is established, working over any distance and across any plane. For a short time, Pazuzu can examine the speaker's thoughts to discern whether the caller seeks aid or is trying to trap him. If he wants to and is able to, Pazuzu will appear in the speaker's location. The Demon Lord almost always agrees to provide aid, but his assistance always comes at a steep price. Pazuzu is truly an enigma amongst all the abyssal powers, and with all of this scheming and chaos amongst the demon lords, Pazuzu seems to be the only one content to let the other demonic rulers go about their business. Even one who rivals him in scheming and cunning, Grazd, has very famous feuds with other demon lords such as Demogorgon and Orcus, but Pazuzu has a great many dealings with creatures on other planes. He's allies with devils and demons alike. Pazuzu rules the Sky Realms above all layers of the Abyss, and no demon prince has contested his rulership of those skies thus far. And although most demon lords regard Pazuzu with suspicion at best, almost none take the time to oppose his actions. They have far more antagonistic enemies around every corner. Simply put, no other demon lord has the time, patience, or desire strong enough to challenge Pazuzu to his claim of all the skies. Whether or not this is due to fear or due to a perception that the skies above are empty and without value is not completely understood. Only a few demon lords actively oppose Pazuzu, and one of those is the infamous Grazd, who in his desire to one day rule the entire Abyss, finds Pazuzu's claim over its skies to be both preposterous and insulting. They have battled many times on countless worlds, and battles between their forces have left scars on both abyssal layers and beyond. Although another of Pazuzu's enemies is the much more obscure Lamashtu, known also as She Who Erases. Well known for her insatiable hunger for the blood and bones of pregnant mothers and newborn babies, Lamashtu was the demon queen of monstrous birth and deformity. Ancient texts maintain that Lamashtu was once Pazuzu's consort until she betrayed him, and he maimed her by eating her eyes and banishing her to an unknown layer of the Abyss. These texts hold that Lamashtu is the only being who knows Pazuzu's true name, and that her abuse of this knowledge is what drove Pazuzu to mutilate her. Pazuzu does have long-term plans and schemes, but he also has base desires, and those desires are innocence, purity, and honesty. To him, these are sweet nectars and intoxicating liquors fine enough to harvest personally. Pazuzu seeks out the noble paladin, the laughing child, and the toiling honest peasant. They are his vineyard. He takes from them what makes them strong, and what he excretes back into their hollow shells is bitter, cruel, and wicked. The very act of corruption of the spirit and the slaughter of virtue is Pazuzu's finest addiction, and he has had eons to perfect the methods of his cultivation. Often, the temptations he offers mortals spread out over generations, and he watches silently from above as families slowly succumb to them. What might have seemed an idle evil to a hardworking cobbler is the seed, and his children and grandchildren are the fertile soil in which Pazuzu's wickedness truly grows. Trace the genealogy of the brutal despot, the sadistic general, or the remorseless killer back far enough, and chances are one can pinpoint the genesis of that family spiral into depravity. A genesis born of knighted wings and poisoned promises to a desperate fool. When these seeds wither and die, Pazuzu appears one last time to his hateful students and plucks from them their eyes, so the last thing they see is the true cruelty of their beloved patron's evil. It is said that those whose eyes Pazuzu feeds upon do not move on to a better world of death. Rather, they become hollow spirits, bound to Pazuzu's lusts, cursed forever to watch from behind his cold black eyes as he feeds and feeds again on what they once held so dear. These desires and needs alone explain Pazuzu's apparent disinterest in lordship over abyssal realms, for what Pazuzu lusts for most is what does not exist. Honesty and innocence are transient visitors to his region, and if they stay for long, they are overwhelmed. One might assume that his hungers would draw him to realms like the Seven Heavens, yet such planes are too pure for his palate. He cannot digest what cannot be consumed. What Pazuzu hungers more than lordship over an endless night, more than a shining realm of absolute purity and endless truth, is nothing more than lordship over the material plane. This realm is a breeding ground for what he seeks above all else. Here, no one is indomitable, and no one is as cruel as they can potentially be. Everyone, from the kindest peasant to the most hateful king, can fall further, and thus nourish Pazuzu's savage hunger. And for some time now, Pazuzu has tested his presence on the material plane, seeing how far he can go before its denizens rise up against him in horror. What he has found has fascinated him. When first he turned his eye to the material plane, he found that it took relatively little of his tampering to raise a mob or alert a church. Yet as the centuries wore on, certain regions in which he has focused his works have grown accustomed to his influence. Where once the possession of a child brought the angry retribution of an entire church, now the corruption of an entire village barely seems to cause a stir. It seems almost as if society itself has grown used to his temptation, accepted his lurking presence. In many worlds, rulers of nations pay homage to the prince of the lower aerial kingdoms now, if not in word then by deed. Nothing could further satisfy Pazuzu, for now he prepares to take these kingdoms, nations, and worlds under his oily wing. And speaking of individuals who have already been taken under his wing, Pazuzu has many following him, starting with his cults. And unlike most demon princes, Pazuzu takes an active role in these cults in their early formation. These start when someone learns his name. Once they call for him, that is the seed of a new cult. Often these pleas are born of true and honest need, a sickly farmer in need of a good harvest, or a desperate warrior faced with insurmountable odds in the defense of his homeland. These people do not start off evil. Their greatest sin is foolishness. When they call upon him, he usually grants them their desires without attempting to pervert the results or twist the meaning of the request. He honors the spirit of the request, not its letter. His methods are far more insidious. He only asks that his name not be repeated to others, assuring the mortal that his gifts are for him and him alone. Yet most of the time, many do not know Pazuzu's true identity. Some worship him under false names like Pazrael or Glonder. And then the desperate mortal's sudden turn of luck always manifests in some way that makes it obvious that more than mere skill and hard work are responsible. Pazuzu knows that where there's one desperate soul, there are always more. And more than often, those other desperate souls see the miraculous results of one man's request. They ask questions, word spreads, and before long, the original mortal realizes that he wants more of Pazuzu's power. Given its initial success, he calls upon him again, and the results are a little more twisted, a little more dark. And he calls again, and before long, the mortal has become a minion, and his neighbors, friends, family have flocked to his side. The cult has formed. He helps them and nurtures them for a while, but when Pazuzu judges his cultists have come to depend on him for success rather than on themselves, he finally reveals himself in his true might and horror. Those cultists who try to repent or flee, he commands the faithful to capture and bind. He then demands sacrifice. And after the heretics have had their tongues and eyes plucked out and their back and torsos deeply lacerated by severed vulture talon, their blind, bleeding, and mute bodies are taken to the nearest precipice or well, and thrown into it. Their final fall and life-quenching impact before signifying their being cast out of the firmament and onto the putrid husk of the land below. The cult is now self-sufficient, and Pazuzu leaves it to its own devices, seeking new prospects, and he will rarely, if ever, answer that cult's pleas again. And once they are accepted into the lower aerial kingdoms, they are expected to serve, not to be served. Out of a warped sense of loyalty and commitment, most of these cultists spend the rest of their lives striving to please their master, converting new members, and sacrificing on their own volition. Despite this disinterest in fiendish politics and his ability to move between the planes on a whim, Pazuzu understands the value of having a good stronghold. Many times in his past, his lusts have found himself confronting an enemy of great power, often a servant of law or good, but just as often a greedy demon lord comes sniffing for something to steal. And while Pazuzu has yet to meet a foe in combat who can do him permanent harm, he is far too wise to think himself indestructible. At the same time, his ravishings upon the material plane have left him with wonders and material rewards to make the most powerful dragon whimper jealously. It's good to have a place to keep your winnings, to display your conquests, and to entertain your guests. And although he claims uncontested rulership of the skies of the Abyss, what few know is that Pazuzu also keeps a lair, deep on that plane. This is the realm of Toramor, on the 503rd layer of the Abyss. Pazuzu's attitude towards his realm is best described as jealous neglect. He often loathes spending time in Toramor, yet is quick to come to its defense at even the slightest rumbling that another demon lord might be hatching plans against it. The tangled nest of beams, perches, rooks, pinnacles, bridges, and arches, connected by writhing ropes and jangling chains. Some regions are fitted with small structures with stairs and ladders, places for guests and prisoners to stay. The massive structure is solid without doubt. Creatures can walk along its surfaces with ease, and those knocked from its perches fall to their eventual deaths below, broken and shattered on bridges and pinnacles lower still. Toramor has no true base, yet it seems to have countless apexes. The countless spires of the massive structure dominate the horizon in every direction. Some of these spires are little more than skeletal frameworks haunted by Anzu, Chasmes, and Vrox, while others are almost fortresses on their own, layers of favored minions. These nests swarm with all manner of flying demons, although Chasmes and Vrox are the most commonly seen. These demons scavenge loose objects from everywhere in Toramor, using raw materials to expand their nests. Yet even as they do, portions crumble and fall away into the infinite void below. But it is said that the fiend that lurks at the nest's center is the brood queen of all that flies and flops through the abyssal skies, and thus the source of all Vrox and Chasme in the abyss. And finally, the most important location in Toramor is the Lord's Rook, a massive but simple structure atop the realm's highest spire. It is here that Pazuzu dwells when he visits the realm. Few can actually claim to have beheld this magnificent open-walled cathedral. It is whispered that something hidden in the core of the Lord's Rook grants Pazuzu his unique ability to plane shift at will. Rumors that have more than anything else fueled Grast's jealousy and hatred of the Prince of the Lower Aerial Kingdoms. And so, while unlike some demon lords, he does not want to see everything fall into the abyss, he does not want to see all life turn to chaos. In fact, he likes life how it is. He is one of the only beings content on his current situation. He commands all the skies of the abyss, taking what he wants, uncontested. He's one of the only ones that can travel easily through all of the abyss and to other planes, including the material plane, where he is almost uncontested in his deals. And even though he might want to take over the material plane, he will never completely corrupt it, for he loves the material plane how it is. If it ever lost its innocence completely, he would be bored, aimless, without purpose. Instead, this Lord of Corruption only seeks to live and thrive in the world that he has helped create. A world of war, a world of evil, and a world of wickedness.